What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And guys, 1 week from today, the Giants play their first regular season game on the road against the Washington Commanders. I cannot wait, man. Football is finally back. I'm sure many of you tuned into the college football games yesterday. There were some exciting moments. There was a big disappointment, though, from Arch Manning, which we don't even have to worry about because we have a quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart, and we're all excited about that. But right now, in the present, Russell Wilson, starting quarterback of the New York Giants. We've got a lot of players who are trying to take steps forward and make sure that this 2025 Giants team is nothing like that 2024 Giants team that gave me nightmares on a weekly basis. I mean, that was awful. I never want to live through that again. But there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic as we do prepare for 1 week from today, kicking off the season against the Commanders. A great team on the rise. But you know what, man? I think that the Giants, they're on the rise too. They have a lot of good players, and some of them are being overlooked. And that's what we're going to discuss in today's episode. A few of these New York Giants players that we think aren't getting enough buzz, aren't getting enough credit and appreciation, and could really have a major impact on the Giants' 2025 season. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that. Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And when you're looking at this roster, who is somebody that stands out to you as being a little bit overlooked going into the 2025 season?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Beautiful weekend, 3-day weekend, Labor Day. Hopefully you guys are having a great time before the start of the regular season. Now we're locking in. Next Sunday, we are locking in for the full 18 weeks, hopefully more. A little playoff action wouldn't hurt anybody. But I'll tell you what, the Giants this year have plenty of starting talent. And I'll tell you what, they have a lot of overlooked talent, as Anthony mentioned. And I think we're going to start with a player here that we both agree is being overlooked. And I keep referencing this player as a fantasy gem that's being drafted in like the 8th round. Don't understand why he's so far down. But I'm talking about Tyrone Tracy. And Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue, transition wide receiver to running back, didn't have a lot of tread on his tires coming into the NFL. And last year had 38 receptions. By the way, just like my hot take of 1,000 yards, 400 receiving yards, it is kind of crazy. But he did have 284 receiving yards last year on 38 targets and did drop 6 passes. So I definitely think 300 yards is possible for him. 400 definitely is lofty, but 300 I think is definitely possible. Did have a receiving touchdown as well. On the ground, he was still very, very efficient with 839 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2.84 yards after contact. He's very slippery in the run game. Once he gets into the gap, he's able to shed tackles and get skinny and really avoid contact, which I think has bode well for him so far. And I think his play style does really kind of give you flashes of some, I wouldn't say his play style is kind of interesting and a little bit unique. I can't like pinpoint a player that really like does exactly what he did. But I think the one guy that stands to my mind, like just kind of naturally evaded tackler was Arian Foster. Not saying that he's anywhere close to as good as Arian Foster, but Arian Foster's play style was very slippery, smooth. He was able to make good decisions and his vision was always excellent. I think Tyrone Tracy has like shades of that, where his vision is really good. He's able to make defenders miss, but he picks the right angles. He's very smart in real time. And I do think that he's an interesting player that I think is being overlooked on this offense.
Well, I do totally agree with you, and I think Tyrone Tracy Jr., not saying that he's got the same level of talent, because the guy that I'm about to mention was a truly elite talent, but the vision, you see shades of Le'Veon Bell. I think a lot of people have said this before about Tyrone Tracy, but he is very patient behind the line of scrimmage, waiting, finds the hole, and then hits it, and obviously the master of that was Le'Veon Bell. So if Tyrone Tracy can continue to develop and get to that level, obviously the Giants are going to be set up for success. But I want to actually throw this out to you, Alex, so you're talking about how he's overlooked from a fantasy football perspective, and I'm going to go a little bit off topic here and just give you guys my fantasy team that I drafted last night with some of my buddies from college. I got a little bit silly with this one, Alex. I wanted to try a new strategy. This is the 0 running back strategy. Just go all in on wide receivers. So just to clarify, this league has 2 flex positions. So basically you can start 4 receivers. I drafted Malik Nabers, then Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Mike Evans, then Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Then the first running back that I selected was Tyrone Tracy Jr. And I got him, and I got that Washington Commanders guy, Bill. And I got Nick Chubb, who's set to be the starter in Houston now. And I also handcuffed myself with Tyrone Tracy with my boy Cam Scattaboo. So I really like this team. It's a ballsy one. It's a unique strategy, but I've seen some people online say to try the 0 running back strategy. I said, you know what, F it. I'm going to give it a try, and I don't know. I kind of like it. If you see the vision, let me know, but I'm with you. Tyrone Tracy, big fantasy year.
It's definitely a scary strategy because you really are banking on running backs who could completely hit or miss, and most of them are probably going to miss. But Tyron Tracy, I do think has RB2 upside for fantasy purposes, and I think for the Giants, if he just gets a little bit more efficient, gets proper touches, the Giants were always off the field last year because their offense couldn't, convert first downs. I think more drives, longer drives, more opportunities. I think 1,000 yards is very, very possible for Tyron Tracy. We're talking about averaging like 50, like 60 yards a game on the ground, which is really not that much. And I think, in the receiving game, he can be an impact piece. He had the drops last year, but I think he will improve in that category. Everyone talks about Malik Neighbors, everyone talks about Russell Wilson, and even Theo Johnson, and, Darius Slayton, and guys that obviously are important to the passing game, but not many people discuss Tyron Tracy and the impact he's going to have this season. I think he's being vastly overlooked. He's one of those guys that could win you a fantasy football league because of the upside he does bring to the table and where you're going to get him. But looking at this Giants offense, they are going to run the ball a fair amount. I know this is a downfield oriented offense. They're going to be doing a lot of stuff in the screen game. But Tyron Tracy, they really did not feature him this preseason. We saw a lot of Turbo Miller. We saw a lot of guys that are really not going to be playing that much. There's a reason we didn't see Tyron Tracy because they want him healthy. You know what I mean? They pretty much gave him minimal reps because of that reason alone. They know he's going to be an important piece. So I think let's take the little attention he's getting and kind of spin it into that's why he's going to get a lot of attention.
Yeah, and listen, we're talking about a guy who is the RB1 for the New York Giants. I know a lot of fans, especially fantasy football guys, from that perspective, they're looking at Cam Scatterbo and they're looking at what he did in college last year, and they're thinking that he's going to eat into Tyron Tracy's reps. I think there's going to be a healthy balance here, but I think that balance, the scale is going to be tipped towards Tyron Tracy. He really earned that role last year, and a lot of people forget how good he was down the stretch for the Giants. Alex, across 12 games last year that he did start, he rushed for 810 yards. If you extrapolate that over a 17-game sample size, he averaged 62.3 yards per game in those starts, which would have been over 1,000 yards rushing. So this is a guy who really does have the capabilities to go for 1,000 yards. He was pretty much on pace for it last year, just wasn't the starter for the first 4 weeks of the season, and that made a big difference. And then from a receiving standpoint, he was on pace for over 300 receiving yards. So I really like his potential to make this impact. I think that he will easily cross 1,000 yards from scrimmage again this season, but I do think this is the year that he goes for 1,000 rushing yards and plants himself in that backfield as the RB1 and as one of the best young running backs in the NFL. I really like Tyron Tracy. Like we said, great vision. He's a great tackle breaker as well, and his upside in the receiving game as a former wide receiver turned running back is tremendous. So love Tyron Tracy Jr. Excited to see what he brings to this offense. Definitely excited to see how this does get balanced out with Devin Singletary, with Cam Scatterbo. But generally speaking, I'm very encouraged by what we saw from Tyron Tracy Jr. all summer. And you're right, Alex, he did not play a lot in the preseason because the Giants do view him as their RB1. But when he was on the field in the preseason, he looked like one of the best players on the field. He was really impressive. And that's a very encouraging sign. When one of your starters gets on the field, you want them to beat up in the preseason because it does indicate, yes, they are a starting level talent and they will run all over backups.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go to the defensive side of the football for a second because I wanted to check out a player that I think is getting overlooked because of this position battle at cornerback. And I'm not gonna lie, I think Cordell Flott won it outright. I think Cordell Flott won the CB2 job, and I know a lot of people we talk about Deonte Banks, former first round pick, yada yada yada, but the truth is, Flott in that preseason game against the Patriots looked really, really good. Really good. I mean, he was sticky in coverage. He was there, made smart plays, had a couple pass breakups. Everything he did screamed to me, he is matured and ready to be a CB2. Now, Deonte Banks obviously has tremendous athletic qualities. He is sticky in coverage. He just doesn't get his head turned around. He doesn't make plays on the football. That is the big developmental lapse in his game. But I do think Cordell Flott has had a lot of time, 3 years in fact, to iron out some of those deficiencies. And I think that because of that veteran kind of mentality he has and that experience, I do think that he's going to get the first crack there. And listen, he's had injuries in the past, so if I were Deonte Banks, I'd be waiting for my chance to play because it's going to come. Your number is going to get called. You just have to be ready for it. So I do think Flott will get the start in week one. I wouldn't be surprised if Banks did just because he is a Giants draft pick, and we know the Giants, or rather a Shane draft pick, we know Joe Shane likes to favor those high draft picks and give them opportunities even when they're struggling. But I think Cordell Flott is being overlooked. I think he is a solid player, and they've put him inside, they've put him outside. He can kind of survive wherever you put him, and now he doesn't have to be a CB1 or a CB. Survive meaning like he's generally competent.
He was pretty bad in the slot.
Well, it's because I'd say this, he's bad in the slot against the run specifically because he's so wiry. He was pretty
bad in coverage in the slot. He was just bad as a nickel cornerback. He was terrible as a nickel
He's
cornerback.
definitely better on the outside, that's for sure. Yes. No doubt about it. But more so, I'm saying he can survive. When I say survive, take that literally. Like, he can survive. He's not going to be great or good even. On the outside, I think he's more than surviving. I think he's competent. And I think that where you're looking at him starting at CB2, the pressure's off of him. He doesn't have to go up against, Justin Jeffersons of the world. He's going up against the secondary options, and a lot of teams have good secondary options, don't get me wrong, but I do think he has earned the right to play over Deonte Banks in the interim.
I don't disagree with you. I disagree with a couple of points that you made. Like, I don't think he survives in the slot, and I think the pressure is still on for CB2 on this team, especially in this division. I mean, I know that the Washington Commanders, Terry McLaurin's the WR1. A lot of people are down on Deebo Samuel after he ate 45,000 cheeseburgers this offseason. I get that, but he still is a former All-Pro talent. That's the WR2 on that team that all our CB2s have to match up against. And when you look at Philadelphia, their offense is explosive because they have playmakers everywhere, and that includes Devontae Smith as the number 2 receiver on that team. And the Dallas Cowboys, people are down on them. They just traded away Micah Parsons. They still do have George Pickens on the opposite side of the field from CD Lamb. So it's a tall task for any cornerback on this roster when you are facing a divisional opponent, whether you're going up against the first receiver or the second receiver. You've got a challenge ahead of you. So Cordell Flott, Deonte Banks, doesn't matter who, they better bring their A game this season. But we're all circled back to what you said about Cordell Flott, Alex. I agree with you. I think who brought their A game this summer? That was Cordell Flott. Who brought their A game last year? Well, I wouldn't even call it an A game, but I think Cordell Flott brought his B game last year while Deonte Banks brought his C or D game during last season. Cordell Flott for the last year has been outperforming Deonte Banks consistently, and I'm talking dating back to last season. When Flott got on the field last year, they finally moved him out of that nickel role that he clearly wasn't comfortable in and that they clearly made a mistake trying to put him in. He started playing on the boundary again last year, and he started to make strides in his game, and those strides have really shown up this summer. He was one of the standouts throughout the spring. He was one of the standouts throughout training camp in the summer, and then in this preseason, Alex, when you are comparing the way that these two players performed on the preseason football field, this is why you feel like Cordell Flott won that job, because Cordell Flott was clearly the better player on the preseason football field. He had a hell of a play in coverage against Garrett Wilson. He had 2 tremendous pass breakups against the New England Patriots in that final preseason game, but that's what confused me, Alex. He was playing in that final preseason game, and Deonte Banks was nowhere to be found. He was on the sideline. He was in uniform, indicating he was healthy enough to play, but the Giants didn't put him on the field because they viewed Deonte Banks as their number 2 cornerback. And I don't agree with it. I think that this should have continued to be a competition into that 3rd preseason game. I think it should continue to be a competition throughout the regular season. And I'm not crazy about the Giants seemingly handing this job to Deonte Banks just because he's a former first-round pick. I don't care where you were drafted. You need to earn your right to be in the starting lineup. That's the way that Giants football should be played. That's the way it's been played historically, but in recent years, there have been draft picks handed jobs, and I'm not crazy about that. And I do fear that's what's happening with Deonte Banks. And let me clarify this in case you're a new listener of the channel. I know that we've added a bunch of new subscribers recently. Thank you guys for joining us on this ride. It's going to be a fun season. But if you are a new listener, I am like the Deonte Banks fan. I was obsessed with him in the pre-draft process. He was the number 1 guy that I wanted the Giants to target in that 2023 draft. I was over the moon when they drafted him. I have defended this guy endlessly over the last 2 seasons. I have probably pulled every excuse in the book out of my ass to defend Deonte Banks. And I'm sitting here saying he is being handed a job he did not earn. So that should be pretty eye-opening for a lot of Giants fans to hear me talking about Deonte Banks this way, based on my commentary and coverage of him over the last 2 years. I think Cordell Flott was damn impressive this preseason, and I think that he should be the starter opposite Paulson and Deebo in week 1. Now, that doesn't mean he should keep that job, and that doesn't mean that we should relegate Deonte Banks to permanently be on the bench. It should be a constant competition. Should be one drive to Cordell. If he plays well, give him another. Give him another. Oh, he let up a couple receptions here. Didn't look so good. Deonte Banks, this is your opportunity to make a name for yourself. That's how I think it should be treated. And I also think it's important to note, Cordell Flott, extra chip on his shoulder this year. Not only trying to steal a starting job, also trying to earn a second contract in the NFL. So keep an eye on Cordell Flott. I think he is one of the most overlooked players in this defense. I think he's a rising young player, and I think that he's a guy with a lot of motivation heading into this year to try and earn himself a big payday going into 2026. Definitely one of the most overlooked players on the New York Giants.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And listen, the hope that I have for Flott in that third preseason game and why Banks didn't play was because Flott was injured the first two, so they wanted to give him extra playing time, and they already got enough playing time. They already saw enough from Banks to make a decision on, like, okay, this is where his weaknesses still lie. This is where he had flaws. Flott, like, across the board was tremendous. So, at this point, I hope that was kind of the reasoning. They just wanted him out there as much as possible, and they didn't really need to see any more of Banks. He had already gotten 2 games under his belt. So that's the only kind of logic I can try to combat with. But listen, like I said and you said, Flott earned that role. Banks, if they give him that job, he did not earn it. It's because he's a former first-round pick, and the Giants don't want to throw that away just yet. But I think, like, also that you mentioned, this is going to be a position battle that does spill into the regular season, as it should, because those two players are I don't think there's like a well-defined winner. I think that Flott has earned it, but I would say, like, it could go either way with one more game, one more drive, Like, there's such a little sample of both players to really make a determination there. So I think it will be a play the hot hand kind of role as they go into the season. Flott has a lot to lose, second contract, and Banks is, under contract for a couple more seasons, but he needs to prove that he can be every bit of value the Giants intended him to be when they drafted him. So we'll see how things progress there. But Anthony, what is your next overlooked player? I know there's a couple left that we have in mind, but I know maybe if one of them, if you do think he is overlooked, is one of your favorites.
Yeah, I do think Giants fans continue to overlook Micah McFadden. This is a very impactful player in the center of the Giants defense who, like Cordell Flott, is gunning for a contract this season. I think he already has earned that contract. I think he already should have been given that extension from the New York Giants, but he hasn't gotten it yet, and it is possible that he's banking on himself. It's totally possible McFadden has said, I don't want to sign a contract until 2026 because I'm going to go out there, put up another 100-plus tackles this year, and get paid next offseason. Because when you look at Micah McFadden's career, Alex, he has gotten better every single year. As a rookie, he was a decent player who started to work his way into the starting lineup. Year 2, he enters the starting lineup and he plays even better than he did the previous year. Last season, again, improved his game and became a reliable player, especially down the stretch as LB1 when Bobby Okereke landed on injured reserve. He's a young player, he's an improving and ascending player, and he's proven to be quite the leader in this Giants defense. I'm a big Micah McFadden fan. I think the Giants should lock him down as soon as possible, and I think they overlook him, and I think a lot of Giants fans do overlook him because he misses some tackles. And this is a point of contention that I always have with Micah McFadden discourse. Guys, when he misses tackles, more often than not, these tackles that he's missing are 3 yards in the backfield. He is shooting gaps like no other player on this team, stopping the run in that fashion by just disrupting things in the backfield and forcing these running backs to miss their lanes and run into other defenders. Yes, he is technically missing the tackle because he fires in like a heat-seeking missile, dives at the running back's feet, the running back evades it, and then runs into the Dexter Lawrence wall 2 feet in front of him. That is a missed tackle technically for Micah McFadden, but a very positive play generated by the linebacker to result in a cleanup tackle for the defensive line. That's my perspective on Micah McFadden. Where I think he actually is flawed is not in his tackling abilities, because again, I think that's where those missed tackles come from, but where he's really flawed is probably in coverage. He's not that great in coverage. Zone or man, you really don't want him matching up against tight ends. Definitely don't want him getting lost in the sauce against any slot receivers, but you don't have to worry about that because one of the Giants' best young players is Drew Phillips. He does a lot of that dirty work. He matches up with those tight ends and those slot receivers. So now this Giants defense is perfectly situated where this great defensive line can go ahead, make these plays, open these gaps, and let Micah McFadden shoot right through them and disrupt these running backs in the backfield. I think he's one of the most overlooked players on the Giants, Alex, and I think you're with me. It's time for Big Blue to extend Micah McFadden.
Absolutely. Like you said, the missed tackles are a mirage. It allows other people to clean them up. So, I do think, Micah McFadden is one of those young players in this team. He is I wouldn't even say he is ascending. A lot of people overlook him because of weaknesses in other portions of the roster. You know what I mean? This team is going to have such a good pass rush, such a good pass rush. If they want to blitz Micah McFadden, he's going to have open lanes. You know what I mean? It's going to be a freaking highway, a 4-lane highway with nobody on it for him to run through. You got to double team Dexter Lawrence. You got to pay attention to Abdul Carter. You got to pay attention to Brian Burns. And you got Roy Robertson Harris in there, or if you have Kayvon Thibodeau in there with Carter inside, you literally cannot block these guys. If you have Micah McFadden or anyone else blitzing from any position, they're going to have a one-way ticket to the quarterback. So going to be really exciting to see how aggressive they get. And Micah McFadden, I mean, in the run game, like runs with his hair on fire. Like this dude is just all freaking gas. And I think that's what makes him so great is that even if he misses a tackle, he disrupts the entire evolution of the play. So it allows other people to clean up the mess. And, you know, you can't always look at stats without context. I think the context is missing with him a lot. The problem with the Giants is that those missed tackles were a little bit more serious because they didn't have the talent to clean up those messes. They didn't have the Drew Phillips of the world in the past. He was injured for a good portion of last year. You didn't have Paulson and Debo out there. You didn't have Tyler Newman playing in the box all the time. You didn't have Javon Holland up there. You didn't have Abdul Carter. Brian Burns is his first year. Dexter Lawrence missed a lot of time last year. Like they just missed a lot. Like they just didn't have enough to clean up those messes. Now they do. I think Micah McFadden's impact is going to be a lot more obvious on game day because of it. But also, that's his role. Be aggressive, get downhill, plug the gaps, expose lanes, get after the quarterback when called upon. He's going to do all those things at a high level, and, we'll see a much more productive version of that because of this team and the roster that they do have. But he's going to earn himself a nice payday because of it. I think you and I both agree the Giants should have extended him before that price increases, and I think that they're about to find out how much it can increase if he has a good season.
100% agree. I mean, when you look at this linebacker core, Bobby Okereke is their starter. He's got 2 years left on his contract, but he's making $10 million per season. Micah McFadden, if you look at his career statistics, Alex, he's on a similar path to what Bobby Okereke was with Indianapolis before he hit free agency. So I don't want the Giants to get roped into having to pay 2 linebackers $10 million per each. I'd rather them just lock this contract down sooner rather than later. So, big Mike McFadden fan for the reasons that we just mentioned. But Alex, who else are you looking at on this team? I know we kind of discussed Drew Phillips, how important he is. I don't really think he's overlooked, though, at this point. I think pretty much everyone is on the same page. One of the most important players on this Giants defense, especially when you look at this division and who he's matching up against. But who else are you taking an eye at and, saying this is a guy that deserves more attention and is going to be really crucial for the Giants this season?
I'm going to throw out a name that you just did not see coming at all. And I think it's because, listen, I'm going to preface by saying the Giants didn't have Andrew Thomas for 15 weeks last year, 14 weeks last year, right? Didn't have Andrew Thomas. And they had one of the worst pass protecting centers in football in John Michael Schmitz. The player I think is actually going to have a much better year is John Runyon. Probably didn't see that one coming. But when the Giants signed John Runyon to that 3-year, $30 million deal, it was because he was exponentially better at left guard, and he was playing right guard for the Packers. The Giants had basically a throw it out there, let's find out game at left tackle last season when Thomas went down. It was horrible. I mean, you guys remember. It was just a disaster. And then they had one of the worst pass protecting centers in JMS, who I think has looked better this summer. If Andrew Thomas returns and can play, let's say week 2, week 3, whenever, they have a better backups in Marcus Bowe, and obviously, looking at James Hudson, even though I think Bo should play. I think John Runyon actually stands to benefit quite a lot from the chemistry he's built, JMS getting a bit better, having a better quarterback under their belt with Russell Wilson, and then Andrew Thomas returning at some point fully healthy. Not the name you probably thought, but I think that John Runyon had a pretty bad go of it last year because of the situation he was in. I think we will see a better version of him this time around.
I do agree with you to a certain extent. I think John Runyon, listen, I didn't think that he was a world beater at the guard spot when the Giants signed him in free agency. In some ways, it was maybe a little bit of an overpay. They gave him $10 million per season, just like they gave Bobby Okereke. But he is a good player, and he's definitely better than what we saw from him last year. Again, as you mentioned, as a result of him not having continuity and talent around him. Having a good left tackle on his left shoulder, having a good center on his right shoulder will definitely help out John Runyon. And Alex, I'm actually going to go there with this. A player that Giants fans and probably fans of the league are overlooking is John Michael Schmitz. And I don't mean this as in they're overlooking how talented he is. I think they're overlooking just how much of a liability he could wind up being this season. I don't want to be negative, but I just want to kind of air my concerns here with John Michael Schmitz. This is probably a storyline that I personally feel like we haven't discussed enough on this channel this offseason, Alex. The Giants did nothing to give themselves a backup plan here for John Michael Schmitz. Former second round pick, that's right, former second round pick in 2023, who was hit with the pro-ready label coming out of the draft and has been anything but. Now he's going into his third season. He's been perpetually banged up. I wouldn't say he's been perpetually injured and missing time, but he's definitely been banged up and playing through injuries. And he also just hasn't reached his potential. We thought he had a high floor. We haven't seen it come together. And one of the things that we've said is he needs a better quarterback under center, somebody who can call these protections and help him out. Agreed. I think that's a great point. What else does he need? Continuity on each of his shoulders. He had revolving doors at guard, at both guard spots in each of his first 2 seasons. Absolutely true. There have been a lot of factors working against John Michael Schmitz, but people are overlooking how important he can be to this unit's success. If he struggles again this year, that could have a terrible trickle-down effect on this offensive line. That could result in him being put on the bench, and then all of a sudden, you got to move Greg Van Roten back to center. And now you're talking about putting Evan Neal in the starting lineup. This is a scenario that could unfold if John Michael Schmitz either A, gets hurt or doesn't play well this season. Because who's behind him? Austin Schlotterman? Aaron Stinney? No, it's going to be Greg Van Roten who moves over to center, and it's going to be Evan Neal who gets put in at right guard. And that is scary because Evan Neal has proven on time and time again to be a little bit of a liability, even if he did start to make improvements this summer. So I think people are overlooking just how crucial John Michael Schmitz is to this offensive line. And again, I'm not saying that in a positive way. I'm saying that as in I'm scared of John Michael Schmitz potentially derailing this offensive line's success this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, John Michael Schmitz, like you said, there's literally zero depth behind him. They'd have to move Greg Van Roten and put Evan Neal as a starter, and that's a disaster waiting to happen. I can promise you, I don't want to see Evan Neal going up against starters, let alone NFC East Division rival starters who want to kick our ass. You're right, though. Like, JMS's development is critical. There's a couple things on the offensive line that really could derail this entire season, right? Andrew Thomas missing a lot of time, which right now I am holding my breath because he still doesn't sound close to ready. He's going to need a couple weeks, I think, before he makes his debut. JMS failing to develop, that will really hurt because if he doesn't take a big step forward, like you said, we don't have anyone there to like step up and fill the gap. And then Greg Van Roten is 36, guys. Like, he is competent. He's a good veteran, but we paid him like a veteran, like a very, very minimally competent veteran. He's like getting a veteran minimum deal right now, essentially. Like, he's that cheap. The Giants have a lot and also so little invested in their offensive line, right? Their first-round picks have been horrible or injury-prone. Like, they're really cheap, affordable moves like Jermaine Illuminor, 2-year, $14 million deal. Like, that's like arguably their most consistent and best player when Thomas is not on the field. Runyon needs to be better, and I think he will be. There's a lot of holes here. They need to step up and play like a unit. Otherwise, they're going to suffer the consequences of playing individually. That's what Carmen Brasillo, I do think, brings to the table, though, that ability to play as a cohesive unit. And I think that's what offensive lines are meant to be like, playing as a cohesive unit. The Giants have been, failing at that goal for a long time. So we saw a lot better this preseason, but regular season is definitely going to be a whole different ball game. When it comes to other underrated players, though, got to think about it. I mean, you could look at Roy Robertson Harris as a guy that's a bit overlooked. I think he's a pretty solid piece. I think I'm not going to label Tyler Nubin as an overlooked player. I think everybody feels like he's going to be a stud this year, but maybe.
I've got one. It's not Tyler Nubin. It's going to be on the defensive line. You mentioned Roy Robertson Harris. I think that's actually a pretty good one because there is a lot of concern about the Giants' run defense and the interior of that defensive line. Roy Robertson Harris is definitely going to play an integral role in this defense. But you know who else is going to play a pretty crucial role is Chauncey Golston. That's where I'm going to go with this because this is a player who is a rotational pass rusher better than what the Giants have had in recent seasons. I mean, look at what he did for that Dallas defense last year, Alex. He had 6.5 sacks. The Giants poached the Cowboys' best pass rusher now that they don't have Micah Parsons off of their team. He would have been the leading guy. He would have been their best pass rusher. Now they're down to whoever that third best guy was last year. Now that Dallas defense is really shredded going into 2025, and the Giants are taking one of their best ascending players and saying, hey, you're our insurance in case we have an injury in this great pass rushing department. You're our insurance in case Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't take that step forward and you're more ready to play on game days. And you're our insurance on the interior of the defensive line as well as the edge because you're a big dude who can play both positions. So people overlook Chauncey Golston. That was one of the Giants' most underrated signings this offseason, an impactful ascending player who will contribute in several facets of the game and on multiple alignments of the defensive line. I really like Chauncey Golston.
The Giants brought him in before they even drafted Abdul Carter. So if they didn't get Carter, he was going to be the primary rotational piece behind Kayvon Thibodeau. It's important to remember that. They gave him a nice little bit of money to be that. And now he's like kind of just a plug and play wherever you need him, to keep legs fresh, to help against the run. He's a little bit bigger than a traditional edge. A lot of versatility there. I think that's a really good pull. A guy that a lot of people are, I'd say the perfect way to put it, a lot of people are overlooking. So I do think Chauncey Golston's a player that could make an impact that maybe people aren't really visualizing just yet. But aside from that, I mean, listen, there's depth pieces that are going to have to play roles here. I think Dane Belton's a guy that traditionally gets overlooked, but because he's not a starter, neither is Chauncey Golston, to be fair. But I do think, if Dane Belton gets called into action, he's had a pretty good knack for finding the football. So he's a player I think could step up and have a pretty solid role. Trying to think of anyone else. I mean, receiver-wise, Bo Collins, I like him as a special teams piece. He can do a lot of stuff for you there. He's a physical, good run blocker. I would not be surprised, Anthony, to see Bo Collins on the field on early downs and running downs because he is a very good blocker, better than some of the other guys on this team. So I would not be surprised to see him on the field on first downs every now and then when the Giants start feeling like they have a good rhythm going, running games going well, other teams really struggling to stop them. Get Bo Collins out there just to be a blocker, even if they know that a run's coming, and I feel like he could play a part in that way. So just some toss-ins there. Any thoughts on those guys?
No, I really like that kind of idea there and skill set to highlight with Bo Collins, his run blocking abilities. I hadn't really thought about that entirely, but it's a great point. When you're trying to run outside with Tyrone Tracy Jr., who sometimes does like to bounce outside, it's a little tough when you've got a guy like Jalen Hyatt who is just not big enough and not strong enough to move a cornerback. It's a little tough to run outside when you've got that guy blocking outside for you. So having Bo Collins, a really physical and solid run blocking wide receiver, could certainly be beneficial to this Giants offense. I think that's a really good pull. And again, I think generally speaking, the Giants are being overlooked. That's how I'm going to wrap up this conversation, Alex. I think you could really make the case for so many of the players on this team. I think people overlook Darius Slayton and the impact that he could have this season. I think one of the most overlooked players now, Alex, over the last month is Russell Wilson. People stopped talking about him because the Jackson Dart hype train left the station. And don't worry, guys, I am the conductor of that train. I am all the way in on Jackson Dart. I am there for the hype train. But I think people are overlooking Russell Wilson and the impact he's going to have on this offense as a veteran and experienced player who's still a good quarterback despite being in his age 36 season. But generally, I just think fans are overlooking the Giants. I think this is a team that got written off because they had the toughest strength of schedule going into 2025 and they were coming off of a bad 2024 season. But as I've said many times before, the schedule that you see in April is not the schedule that you're playing in September, October, November, and December. It's a week-to-week league. And already look at some of the weeks coming up for the Giants with a Samuel Cosmi sidelined Washington Commanders in week 1, a rusty Terry McLaurin, a Micah Parsons-less Cowboys defense twice this season, Rashee Rice out for the Chiefs, Rashawn Slater out for the Chargers. This schedule has already gotten easier and the season hasn't even started. Now it could get tougher again, but it could get easier and the Giants could just look like a better team than people expect. So I just think people are overlooking our New York Football Giants. I am very optimistic going into the season. And for those of you who have been subscribed for a long time, I'm sure this is pretty crazy for you to hear because I have been a pessimist and I have been down on this team and very apathetic going into week 1 before, but not this time around. I'm feeling optimistic. I'm feeling very positive. And man, am I excited, Alex. I can't wait for the season to kick off 1 week from today. It's going to be a blast. I'll be over at the Bazaar Music Festival next weekend with Chris the Entertainer. Right now, guys, if you want to get tickets for that, they are on sale. Labor Day weekend special. You can go ahead and get some tickets. You can meet me. You can meet the Entertainer. You can watch Giants versus Commanders with us and see us do live play-by-play and reaction streams at the festival. Good drinks, good music, good times, and good Giants football. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. So, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.